Good morning, Judy. Good morning. All right, before the jury comes out, I just want to let you know for planning purposes, I plan to go to 5:30 today because we've lost a little time throughout the week. So we'll go to 5:30 today. And then starting when we come back on May 16th, I want to start at 9 o'clock, okay? So we'll be going 9 to 5 starting those last 2 weeks just to give us a little bit more of a factor there so we can get all our time in, okay? All right. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Just two exhibits, the defendants 167, 170.
One defendants 167
170.
and 170. Okay, perfect.
We're still working with counsel on the decks for Johnny.
Okay, all right, so we got those two. All right. Anything else before the jury comes out? All right, thank you. Give the jury. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to let you know that today we're going to go till 5:30. So I just want to let you know at the beginning of the day that we'll be going till 5:30, okay? All right, thank you. All right, your next question, yes, ma'am?
Thank you, Your Honor. Amber, when we finished yesterday, we were talking about the Bahamas and the yacht and flying off in a helicopter. I'm going to just ask you to take a look at, Michelle, if you can bring up Defendant's Exhibit 1091. I think that's 1090. Scary that I would know that. Do you recognize this picture?
Yes, that looks like the picture I took of Johnny in July, around July 2013.
Okay, and why did you take this picture?
Because at the time, I was already sensitive. I'd been in a relationship with Johnny for over a year, coming up on 2 years, and I had already noticed that there was this pattern of behavior changes with him that would make my life significantly more complicated or peaceful, difficult, or wonderful, depending on what he was using. And I only could tell what he was using because I would have to look for clues, and he would pass out and get sick and lose control of himself. And then people would pick him up and clean him up and fix it. And he wouldn't either remember, or he would deny it, or he would accuse me of saying that this had happened when it didn't. And there was no one to back me up. There was just his employees and everyone who had been taking care of him, versus my word. And so I started to take pictures to say, look, this is happening. This is, I understood enough about addiction to know that you have to hit rock bottom. Like, you have to have some consequence for your action or for your behavior if you ever change to get better. And it seemed to me like that was not happening. So I noticed a behavior pattern change, and he started to, instead of fits of rage. He started to pass out a lot and fall asleep and kind of fall asleep mid-conversation. And it was just a pattern change. So I started to pick up on the clues so I could figure out what I was dealing with.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of Exhibit 1091.
Any objection?
No objection, Your
All right,
Honor.
1091 in evidence, you can publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Ms. Heard, and what is depicted in this picture? Please tell the jury.
Johnny passed out on the island where we were vacationing. He had had a bit of a stint of sobriety right before this, and it started to change with his friend Paul Bettany. And yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask you, Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 1095? We talked about March 2013 yesterday, and I just wanted to bring this up quickly. Do you recognize this picture?
Yes, that was taken.
Before you go further, did you take this picture?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of Defendants 1095.
No objection, Your
All
Honor.
right, 1095 in evidence, you can publish.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, Amber, will you please tell the jury why you took this and when you took this?
This was after a several-day bender, a binge of Johnny's. The 22nd of March, which we talked about yesterday, about he tried to burn a painting. It was accusing me of having affairs with a musician, my ex-partner, and he was on these, a drug binge where I saw him no eating, little to no sleep, and he would just use cocaine and drink all day long. Okay. And that would go for a period of time, and then a major blowout, and then he'd get sick and pass out, and then feel really awful, and often, including this time, would start a period of sobriety after that.
Okay. Now I'm going to take you to mid-July 2013, the Tokyo press tour for Lone Ranger. Can you please tell the jury about that particular trip and the events relating to Mr. Depp?
Sure. He was promoting a Lone Ranger, and I had just met his kids at the premiere in Los Angeles shortly before this tour started. They found out about me.
Amber, I'm going to just ask you not to go through that.
Sure.
Just take us to Tokyo, please. Okay.
So I believe we went from that stop to Tokyo with the kids, and he had difficulty with drinking in front of them. He was trying to hide it, and yet he was dealing with some stress around his career. I didn't have a lot of details, but he was drinking at the restaurant, and the kids were kind of, noticing, but not really sure what to make of it.
Objection calls for speculation and hearsay.
She didn't say what they said.
I'll sustain us to the last part of the answer.
Okay, please continue, but don't say what they said. Okay, the kids said.
Anyway, Johnny became upset with me for judging him. He was, it was like I couldn't win if I didn't do anything, if I didn't say anything to him about the drinking, if I didn't acknowledge it, it got worse. If I did acknowledge it, it was my fault and I was nagging. And I get it, I wouldn't like to be told what to do either, so. But it made him really angry, and the kids were on this press tour, and I was just concerned about them. I was concerned about them hearing us. Johnny screamed at me in the hotel room, and all I could think were the kids were in an adjoining room. What if they could hear us? I had just met them, and I didn't want them to think poorly of me and hate me, not knowing what was going on, in our behind closed doors. I just I remember it was name calling, and he eventually passed out.
Do you recall what names he called you? Do you recall what he said?
I heard at this time nagging bitch all the time. Called me a cunt. He even said that he made a mistake with me, and that he didn't want to, that when we touched back down, he'd get rid of me and I'd go back to, he said some disgusting things to me. I don't know if I need to repeat it.
Okay, let's go. Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 1090? You indicated, I think, that he passed out at the end of that. Did you take this picture?
I did.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 1090.
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
1090 in evidence. You can publish.
Thank you. And where was Mr. Depp when you took this picture?
He was passed out with his head in a table in the hotel room, in our hotel room, not the kids' hotel room, in Tokyo, on that press tour.
All right. Now I'm going to take you to August 2013. What, if any, discussions did you start having with Mr. Depp about moving in with him?
Well, after this, I was getting close to his kids, and he had a stint of sobriety shortly after that, and it felt really good again. And shortly after that, he started suggesting that I let him rent my apartment for the vultures. That's what he called the press. And he said now that we were like a known couple, now that it was out in the press, that my apartment wasn't like safe effectively for me. And I had a modest apartment in Los Angeles. And so he started saying I needed to have security on me, or we'd rent out the neighboring houses because of the vultures. And it was a conversation, and then that conversation evolved into I should move in with him. Always wanted me to go with his security guards, wanted me to have his credit card. Obviously, I wouldn't accept that, but the conversation about moving in became, hard to resist, because I was increasingly becoming a part of his life, and also loving his family, and feeling like, more stability would mean more stability with him and his struggles with drug and alcohol use. And I thought I would minimize some of the jealousy and insecurity that he had. It was hard for me to justify working. Every audition, every meeting, every script I got was a negotiation or a fight. I had to justify it like as if I was saying, hey, let's have an open relationship. It was, and I thought that would be minimized if I could make him feel more secure. By, if we live together, certainly there would be more security, right? And that was my reasoning.
So you talked about still reading scripts and things. What, if anything, did you do differently in terms of pursuing your acting career?
Well, I've always been really independent, and I've never imagined not working. I've worked from the earliest time I can imagine. I come from, parents who worked until they literally couldn't anymore. I never imagined myself having to explain my job or justify my job, but I did, and I am independent, and I see myself as independent and strong-willed, and I had to bargain. Every time I'd get a script, it would be, I thought you weren't taking another job. I'd always say, are you kidding me? That's crazy. I have to work. I support my family. When I moved out to LA, I'd get a check for, a gig, $600 or something. I'd save half for me, send half to my family. I kept having to justify taking work by saying, I'm supporting my parents, you know, I'm supporting my sister, I'm supporting my family, I have to work. And he would say, you don't have to work, kid, let me take care of you, my woman doesn't have to work. And that sounds really sweet and really romantic in some way, but it became a real fight. You know, every time I got a script, it was what kind of, you know, how I was dressing, what kind of behavior I'd have, how did I have a sex scene? And then I started saying, no, I won't take the sex scenes, or, you know, I'll take the part where I don't play, you know, that kind of character. Or then I started minimizing the kinds of kissing scenes that I had, and eventually I had to change the wardrobe that I could have in the movie. I couldn't have a sex scene, but that all, you know, it didn't happen all at once, of course. It was little thing after little thing after little thing, and eventually I found myself pushing as many scripts off my desk as I could, picking the ones that had minimal makeup, dressed as conservative as possible, finding ways to minimize the scenes I had where I had a romantic involvement of any kind. It was a constant battle and negotiation.
So let me take you back. Did you, as a result of your discussions with Mr. Depp about moving in, did there come a time that you did move in with him?
Objection leading.
Overruled. Thank you.
Yes.
Please, and let me ask you this. You've talked about penthouse, we've heard a little bit about penthouse appointments and suites. Could you just explain to the jury the different places that Mr. Depp had in Los Angeles and what they were called, just so we have some context here when we're going through all this?
It's a little confusing, I imagine. He had about, I think, 4 or 5 mansions in this beautiful, like, you know, border of Beverly Hills and West Hollywood, and they were all in a cul-de-sac, and we called it Sweetser because that was the name of the street. And there 5 houses, I think 5 houses, it could be 4, all, you know, effectively he had the whole street. Then he had about 5 penthouses downtown on the same floor of the Eastern Columbia building, which you've heard about, the ECB. And Sweetser was, you know, Johnny's kingdom. One of those houses was like a whole house was his man cave. It was a studio, and it was where he made music and hung out. And we spent some time in there, but that was effectively Johnny's, you know, place. And then there was the downtown places, and they were effectively empty save for some furniture and one of Johnny's friends, Isaac, who you met, and he lived there at some point before Johnny and I eventually decided to move in together.
Let me just stop you there. I just want to make sure we're clear. Are we talking about the penthouses, or are we talking about the suites here? For where
Isaac lived in the penthouses. Okay. The rest of them were pretty much empty. And my best friend, who I was very, 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 very close to, went through a breakup, and he very kindly insisted on moving her into this penthouse. And of course, she said no for the first few times, but he insisted and said they were empty and he would love to have her move down there. And he very kindly moved my best friend downtown. Problem is,
Rocky?
Yeah, okay. Rocky Pennington. But the problem is it's like 30, 45 minutes from West Hollywood, where my place was, which we call Orange at the time.
Okay. So when did you move into the penthouses?
Shortly after he moved Rocky, my best friend, into the penthouse. So she was in one of these empty-ish apartments, and somewhere around that time, I think it took me some time, actually, but after that, I eventually agreed to move in with him and give up my place, although that made me pretty nervous, to be honest. But we were in this relationship that was very serious, and we were constantly traveling. Also, as another part of it, is we were in LA for a matter of days or weeks. I'd go do a job, he'd go do a job, I'd come back for a photo shoot or a red carpet, go on a location, go visit him on a location. And there was an incredible amount of travel and movement. So we weren't really, again, living the day-to-day that you might normally with a partner, you know, where you have a home and you move in together and you have one home. We didn't have that. It was
Okay.
very different.
I'm going to take you to September of 2013. What were you filming at that time? London Fields?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
I was filming London Fields. I just started.
All right. And did there come a time that you became engaged to Mr. Depp?
Well, yeah, it was difficult because in that role was a very difficult role. I mean, every time, every scene that involved sexuality or romance was like, I'd look at that on the page and it felt like I'd feel my gut tighten because I knew it was going to be an issue. But Johnny dropped me off. I gave him the script. I sent him pictures of what I was wearing in my wardrobe fittings. I sent him everything. I shared my script with his team, and the fighting eventually kind of minimized. It was clear I was going to do this job, and I told myself I had to do this job. And Johnny had to go to London, I think, for some pre-production stuff for a movie he was going to do a smaller part in. I think it was called. I think this was Into the Woods, is my best guess. So he dropped me off in London, and when he dropped me off in London, we had a few days at this hotel that we first, consummated our relationship in. It was when we were on the London press tour, and our relationship developed. That was the same hotel, and we were in this same room, which is Johnny liked to be in the same room. And it was really sweet. He got down on one knee and said, "I want you to be my girl forever, my woman, my girl. I want you to be the rest of my life. Say yes to me." He said he wanted to spend every day. He promised me that every day when I woke up, that I would wake up and he would make me smile at least once. And that would be his goal. And, I looked into his eyes and I saw my future, hope, like blind hope. I was so in love. It was one of the most, I can't describe that kind of joy, I thought, if we were married, then this is real. This is real. This isn't a thing of, this isn't chaotic, and this will change. I had so much hope in that moment. And I just said to him over and over again, "Are you serious? Are you real? Are you serious? Are you sure?" Because he didn't have a ring, so I thought, is this an impulse thing? My experience, Johnny could be very impulsive, and he said over and over again, "Be my woman forever. I want you to be my wife, my wife, my wife." I of course cried, and we had a wonderful evening, and he left shortly after, and I was like, the next day I had to go to work, and I couldn't tell anyone, and I wasn't sure. Part of me was worried that he didn't mean it, or that he wasn't sure. I just didn't want it to be an impulse thing, so I didn't want to mention it. I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to. And I kind of I walked around for a few days like I had butterflies under my skin. And then he brought my dad out to London with my best friends. And my dad told me, Johnny has asked me permission for your hand in marriage. And I felt like the luckiest woman in the world.
So while you were filming London Fields and Johnny had gone back to L.A., what, if any, issues did you have with him on fraternizing with the cast? I'm going to ask, Michelle, can you pull up Defendant's Exhibit 188, please?
Your Honor, I'm going to object on hearsay.
Your Honor, I'm going to, let's pull up 188A. I've redacted everything but what Mr. Depp says.
All right, let me
On
just take a look
188A.
at 188A.
That's submission against interest. Do you have that? You don't have it? Give that a minute. While they're working on that, can you tell us what transpired between you and Mr. Depp when you wanted to do something with a cast member?
So, as I said, he came to London for his own work and also dropped me off in London, where I had to be for a few months to film this movie. And he asked me to marry him. He brought my best friends and my dad out. They left. And shortly after they left, my co-star, one of my co-stars, invited me to go to a concert with him and some of the cast to kind of break the ice, and I'd be working with them for the next few months. And I had already, I already knew I couldn't be photographed, even if it was platonic. I couldn't be photographed with men or women that other people could possibly spin as romantic. I had learned that but in January, the hard way. So I asked him permission if I could go to this concert with the cast. And I said, Johnny, that he's my co-star.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Don't tell us what the co-star said. Just tell us what your communication was with Mr. Depp.
Objection, hearsay. Her communications are hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
I'm not sure I understand.
If you want to approach, that's fine.
Yes.
That if I accepted the invitation and went out to a concert, that the engagement would be off, that the relationship would be off, and that I was foolish, naive for thinking that people could invite me to a concert in a platonic way. I tried to say that it was fine.
Objection,
that it was,
hearsay.
She's testifying about what Mr. Depp said. I don't understand.
All right, I'll overrule that objection.
Please continue.
Yeah, he said I was foolish and naive, that no one could invite me to, how could I be so dumb to think that somebody could just invite me to a concert? Why would they want to hang out with me? Obviously, it was because they wanted more from me, and that I probably wanted more too. You know, I was basically asking for it. You're going to go backstage. What are you going to say to the band? And then I know how this plays out, and who's the other girl going to be there? And how could you be so stupid? How could you be so foolish? You're more naive. You should be smarter than this. And I apologized. I stayed, that whole evening, I think for a few hours I spent on the phone with him, texting, calling, or talking, hanging up. He'd hang up on me, be upset, and then send me cryptic messages about my foolishness. And, you know, I'm already doing a movie where I play this, character where I was empowered. Like, I read the script and I thought this character was empowered sexually. And by the time I got Johnny's feedback on it, I had been convinced that actually I was just being used, that I was just being used. It was clear that that was all I had to offer, and I was too foolish to see it. And I had
Amber, I'm just going to stop you right there because I'd like you to take a look at Defendant's Exhibit 188A.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in front of you? Do you recognize this portion of the text chain between you and Mr. Depp?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and this is on September 9, 2013?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and are these statements Mr. Depp made to you during that evening that you just described to the jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's 188A.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, 188A in evidence as redacted. Do I have that redaction, or is that something you need to give me?
I think we're going to need to give it to you
Okay.
hard copy.
All right,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you, Your
Appreciate
Honor. And if